Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. With us today is Professor Mary Lawlor, the Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders, and Mr. Clément Voule, Special Rapporteur on the Rights to Freedom of Peaceful Assembly and of Association. Both presented their reports to the General Assembly yesterday, and you would have gotten press releases summarizing some of their statements overnight. They will make opening remarks, and then we will take questions. So let me start then. Mrs. Lawlor, please.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming. The report that I presented, in it I analyse the situation of women human rights defenders working in conflict, post-conflict and crisis-affected settings. And I highlight their contributions to peace and security, despite the often difficult and even hostile environments that they work in. I show the variety of work that women human rights defenders do in such contexts to contribute to building just and sustainable peace, providing services to populations affected by conflict, documenting human rights violations, gathering evidence for future accountability, and advocating at national, regional, and international levels promoting women's rights, participation, and agency. There are many, many risks faced by women human rights defenders in conflict, post-conflict, and crisis-affected situations. Criminalization, intimidation, stigmatization, and sexual and gender-based violence are all prevalent. There is increased risk to visible women human rights defenders in environments where already deeply held patriarchal attitudes are further hardened as a result of increased militarization in conflict settings. Women human rights defenders are subjected to differing risks depending on their identities and according to the additional identities they hold. So sexual orientation and gender identity are risk multipliers. Risk faced can also be more severe depending on a woman human rights defender's ethnicity, her race, religious affiliation, or nationality, where one of these can mean a woman being singled out and specifically targeted if she is vocal. I welcome the inclusion of women human rights defenders in a number of states' action plans on women, peace and security, an effort made by others to invite women human rights defenders to address the Security Council. And I further welcome the practical measures some states have taken to support human rights defenders, including through political support, visibility funding, and flexible visa schemes. However, states must do more to support conditions in which women can safely participate, in which women human rights defenders can safely do their work. And I concluded in the report with recommendations to member states of the UN and the United Nations and civil society organizations. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this press briefing. Let me start by saying that we are faced today by heightened threats to our global peace and security. It is clear that peace efforts are failing to bring sustainable results. And as I highlighted yesterday in my report, a recurrent mistake of past peace processes is the failure to ensure inclusivity and to listen and address the conflict-related need and grievances of community and social groups in order to address the conflict root causes. Meaningful inclusion is key to ensure sustainable peace. It is important. For this, the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association are vital, as these rights allow community groups, marginalized groups, and all segments of the society to be able to take part in the peace-building processes and to be able also to be included in decision-making about transitional justice or peace deal. These rights often provide the avenue, and they are the only available avenue for people, youth, women, and marginalized groups to be able also to bring their grievances and to ensure that peace deal and peace agreements address the root causes of the crisis that brought the country where the country is. But we have often too many examples around the world demonstrating how the suppression of these rights and the failure to listen to the communities and social movement in the context of conflict prevention and peace building led to the failed peace processes. Let me just give you 2 examples. In Sudan, the brutal repression of pro-democracy protests by the military and de facto authorities, and the lack of meaningful inclusion of protest movement representation while focusing on those that hold the power involved in the killing and the repression led to the serious escalation of the violence, and we know where Sudan is today. Another example that I would like to give quickly is in Afghanistan. Women were completely sidelined from the peace processes, lead to today's dire situation of gender apartheid imposed by Taliban, who were brought through closed door, and let me be honest, with US-Taliban peace deal. These 2 examples demonstrate how, when the international community is not taking lead to ensure that social movement groups, communities, civil society are on the table, can lead to the lot of investment for nothing, and just empowering those who are the perpetrators to restart again the war. So I made some of recommendations to the international community and some steps that I think are important if we look at conflict that we are going through today around the world. It is important for me, as a first thing, to protect this fundamental freedom, which is the right to allow people to organize, allow groups to organize, victim group, marginalized group, in order to be able to bring their grievances and to contribute meaningfully to the peace agreement, both at the national, regional, and international level. It is important also to enhance their participation, not just their representation, but their participation and also their contribution to the peace deal, but also to ensure that the peace agreement should be implemented by the both parties. It is important also to fight against impunity, to ensure accountability, to make sure that those who commit those crimes should not be recognized or should not be put, let me say that, around the table at the same level that those who are trying to really promote and defend the peace. It is important also, as my last example, for the international community to adopt the bottom-up approach by supporting the grassroots, where there is really an understanding of the root cause of the crisis, to ensure that their participation is one of the main requirements for the international community before investing to the peace agreement or the peace or the transitional processes. So all of this, for me, will make the international community more effective when it comes to the democratic transition or peace building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll open it up for questions. Just a gentle reminder, please, that while we know each other, the panelists do not, so please introduce yourself. Evelyn.
Thank you very much for the interesting, if not scary, analysis that you just presented. Something very basic, because we all get sorry. My name is Evelyn Leopold, Globetrotter Media and Pass Blue. Now, where is the report? To whom did you present it, and how do we get it?
If you'd like to.
We both presented yesterday to the General Assembly, and the report is online on the UN website. Mine was on women human rights defenders, peace and security, and Clément's was
freedom of association, peaceful and the protection of these rights in the processes of peace building and democratic transitions.
And is there any differential between regions, or are the abuses spread evenly through the world?
I didn't get the question.
I can start about you asked about whether there were any differences in regions or they evenly spread throughout the world. When it comes to women human rights defenders, we know that women are already a marginalized group, and they are doubly at risk because of not only who they are, but what they do. And if they make themselves visible in a patriarchal society or a society, religious fundamentalism, or a militarized society, or even if they are a lesbian or a transgender in a heteronormative society working for the rights of LGBTI, that increases all the risks that they face. So it depends very much on what the country is and what the situation is, whether it's a crisis situation, a conflict situation, a post-conflict. But we can say without a doubt that women human rights defenders suffer as much as their male counterparts, but more gender-based violence and sexual violence because of their work.
Evelyn, I just forwarded to you the press releases from both special rapporteurs. You have the press release as well as the links to the reports in your inbox right now. Okay. Pamela Falk? Oh, sure. I'll forward that to you. Pamela, do you have a question?
Yes. Yes, thank you very much for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. You mentioned women's rights, and Clément, if I may, you mentioned the Taliban-U.S. peace deal. What is, with all your experience, what would be the best approach to try to get more rights for women in Afghanistan, because everything else has failed? Thanks. I know, big question.
Well, I think I highlight this in my report, and today I'm sure all of us, we know when the whole issues in Afghanistan, U.S. withdrawal of Afghanistan, and the Taliban coming back, we all understand that there's something was missing. Why? Because during the deal and agreements, those who are really suffering from Taliban regime, from the crisis, they were not around the table. In particular, women were not represented. So in my report, this is what I'm trying to highlight. There is a need to involve women-led movement from the design itself of the process and the implementation. This is how the women groups and other groups can also follow up the implementation, and to be able also, when they think that the belligerents are not following the agreement, they can also come on the streets and protest. And we have also another example in Sudan, when people come on the street and saying that no, the agreement that civilian has with military was for the military to leave the power at a certain time. There was repression, silencing them. And what the international community we did, we continue to negotiate with the same people, the same that are repressing, the same that are promised that they will go for the transition. And at the end, where we end, we empower them. And when they know that they have a lot of recognition at the international level, they start fighting again. So we need to change. We need to change that. And for me, is involving them for the design of the process and the implementation, and ensuring also that there were women group, marginalized group, LGBTI group, all vulnerable groups are well-resourced to be able also to follow the process, to participate in the process, to ensure that the process results with something effective and sustainable, and bring a sustainable peace and effective transition.
Yeah, I just, I talked to hundreds of Afghan women human rights defenders in the year before the Taliban took over and after the Taliban took over. And there are still some women human rights defenders there doing their work insofar as they can. That being said, we know that, they got so many threats. We heard of things like getting rape text through their phones, being told they were going to have to marry a Taliban, not being able to go to the bank, not being able to go out and collect dead bodies in the street, all these kind of things. And especially after the legislation that was brought in to limit their scope of work, which just the most extreme example was in December 22, on working at national or international NGOs. The UN conducted a survey, and also UN Women conducted a survey. In the immediate aftermath of the ban, 94% of the 127 national NGOs they either fully or partially ceased operations. So it is a dire situation for women human rights defenders. But the point is, I think, we have seen right through the decades that the human rights movement survives. Women human rights defenders are always at the fore of the human rights movement, and they find ways in the face of complete hostility to carry out work. And that's what keeps the movement alive in so many countries where there is conflict, and they draw communities together. They find ways to, like, for example, in Ukraine, this nurse who was a member of an NGO, just after Kyiv was invaded by the Russians, she went from morning till night delivering food and medicine to elderly, disabled and terminally ill. And we have got, from all over the conflict areas in the world, we have women human rights defenders telling us about what's going on and trying to monitor what's going on, collect evidence for war crimes or breaches of international law, and also provide services, because they step in when the state is unable or unwilling. And that's why they have to be supported. They have to be participative. They have to be allowed to participate. And we know in peace processes that it has a 20% chance more of succeeding for 2 years. Multiple studies have shown this, if women are included.
Thank you very much. And Pamela, you have the information you requested in your inbox. Sure. Let me go online. I do have a question for you, Professor Lawlor, from Yvonne Murray, who's with the Irish RTE. And Yvonne asks, I'm looking for comments from Professor Lawlor on the Gaza evacuation order issued by the Israeli military. Member states have come out in support of it, but the UN has said it was impossible. What is her view from a human rights defender's point of view?
Well, yesterday in my remarks to the General Assembly, I quoted a woman human rights defender and journalist from Gaza who said on Tuesday, people in Gaza have nowhere to go. There is no safe place for civilians to shelter. She warned that the imminent electricity and internet blackout, which we're now seeing, will only facilitate further atrocities. And I called on states I said states must prohibit the collective punishment of the Palestinian civilians by Israel following the atrocities by Hamas. Of course, we all condemn the atrocities by Hamas. It goes without saying. But from a human rights point of view, what is happening amounts to collective punishment of a civilian population, and there is no justification for violence that indiscriminately targets innocent civilians, whether by Hamas or the Israeli forces. It is absolutely prohibited under international law and amounts to a war crime.
I don't see any other questions in the room. I don't see any additional questions online. All right, if not, then thank you very much. Thank you to all of you. Have a good afternoon.
You don't need to conclude.
Excuse me. My
Thank you very
apologies.
much. I would like, just in conclusion, to also reiterate, for me, the urgency today for all of us to really pay close attention to our global security. We know that there is so many peace processes going around, transitional to democracy around, that are failing. We know that peace processes are still there for years. And today is a time to call for effective peace processes, effective transition. Because we are seeing that because of the failure of this transition, even though the democracy is pushed back, people don't anymore trust democracy because they have been there, civil society, defenders, fighting for democracy. And when it comes time for the international community to stand and support them and to reaffirm the principle that people have the right to choose which government or which type of system they want, which type of democracy they want, when it comes to this time, to ensure that their voices are heard through electing their own leaders, we know that the international community always trying to prioritize the belligerent and those don't believe really in those values. I'm sorry to say that the failure of many democratic processes around the world is also the fact that we are not able really to listen to the grassroots civil society, to listen to the women, to listen to those who are suffering, those who are impacted by dictatorial regime, by conflict. We need to change the paradigm. If not, I'm sorry to say that we will wake up one day and there will not be any more table to sit and to negotiate. We have to stop what is going on around the world today. We cannot afford anymore continue to have all of the crises around the world. And we cannot continue because those crises also are undermine also the international system. We are overwhelmed by crises today, and we need to be more effective. We need to put our investment where is needed. This is called for the state. This is called also for all of us because it's our collective responsibility to ensure that we don't leave this world for the next generation in completely mess. Let me say that.
All right. Can I ask a follow-up?
You know what, let me maybe go to Stefano and then to Pamela.
Yeah, it's a
Got it,
follow-up
Santa.
of what you just said, because it's actually probably linked a lot to what's happening at the moment in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. For example, the Palestinians didn't have elections, democracy, for a long time. One of the reasons is people think, or at least the leadership now of the Palestinian, the West Bank think, oh, well, you know, better us than Hamas, because people think that Hamas will win the election. So I have a question. I agree, democracy, you know, the will of the people will help conflict to prevent conflict. But when a conflict has been going for so long, what happens is the extremists take advantage. So how you resolve this dilemma? If you have elections, extremists go into power, and then you have what happened in these last days. How you make sure that when you give the votes to the people, the choice is not for conflict, but for peace?
Well, I don't believe that people choose for conflict. I don't believe that women group, those who are working, those who are genuinely really people that work for human rights, they work also for the well-being. I don't think they choose conflict. I think this is yes, it's important to ensure that people's voices are heard and people can decide what type of leadership they want. And I think the case of Palestinian is quite complicated. It's a different scenario in a way that there are multiple demands that is mixed with how people choose their leaders. There are multiple demands on that. So I wouldn't say that Palestinians maybe choose by voting for Hamas to go for war or any conflict? No, I don't think so. I think there are circumstances where it may happen that at this time, people are completely disempowered. People don't have resources. People don't have necessary platform to be able also to make their voice heard. And we know how some of those elections is happening around the world today. Just because those who are communities don't have really the capacity, they don't have really the support they need to be able to freely elect and to be able to make sure. Because I think also that international community, when there is a conflict, when there is a type of situation like in Palestine, we should be supporting the peace. Supporting the peace process is also support civil society, support community, in order to give them the possibility also to choose a better future, to choose sustainable peace, to give them the possibility also to make their decision in a way that they don't feel that because they have been injustice for generation for them, and there is no way that the international community can listen to them. That's also the big problem. I think the frustration of the Palestinian also is that for many years, no one really have been able to help them to make sure also their legitimate demand is go through. This doesn't justify, I want to be clear, what is going on and those atrocities from Hamas. Neither what is happening against the Palestinian people with the bombing of Israel. That doesn't justify that. What I'm saying is give the voice for those who want peace, who are the majority that is silenced today. They can speak.
So just to sum it up, give the Palestinians the opportunity to vote now for the government that want peace. Would you give the Palestinians in this next month an election so they could?
I'm quite sure Palestinians will choose peace. They will choose to go for peace. But we need to create the condition for them to be able also to choose for that. And we need to create the condition also to reassure them that the international community, we can uphold on the principles, we can also uphold on the decision that the international community make to have also the Palestinian right to be protected as a citizen, living in a country, living in a free country. And I think I'm not going to go to the two-state solution that we have put in for years. But I just wanted to make sure that in this context currently, for me, what we need our efforts should be put now to end what is going on. We are all very, very horrified by what Hamas did by attacking civilians, all of these terrorist acts. But we don't also accept what is going on the bombing on Palestinians. And I think this is what my colleague was trying to say, that there should not be collective punishment, because I'm not sure that the majority of Palestinians should be guilty of what is happening. And I'm quite sure that they want peace.
Thank you very much. Pamela, did you have a question?
I just had a bigger picture follow-up to both of you. You both spent a lot of time on human rights defenders and conflicts. The Secretary General is saying the world is at an inflection point, more conflicts since 1945. I mean, I know why is a tough question, but why is the world, I mean, everything else is advancing in the world. We can reach the moon, but why are there more conflicts now than before?
I'd just like to have a shot at it. So I started in the 70s, and we were not able to see what was going on there in the way that we did, that we can now. But at that time, you had the Soviet Union, you had people being boiled alive in Tajikistan, not in Tajikistan, in another Central Asian country. You had all the military dictatorships committing atrocities in Latin America. You had apartheid in South Africa. There was an awful lot of atrocities going on. You had butchers, Idi Amin in Uganda. And you tend to forget that, you know, each decade brings awful human rights abuses. We had Bosnia, we had Rwanda, we now have Sudan, we have Myanmar. As you say, we have more now. And I think what has happened is that the principle, this is the 75th anniversary of the UDHR, and that document created the UN. And what we seem to have lost is the recognition of the baseline of the principles that formed the UN and the values of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, on which all the work of the UN should grow from. So now you have polarization of states, you have political interests, you have states going after each other all the time, and you have all these terrible conflicts. So I really do believe that there has to be a recentering onto the values and the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which apply to everyone everywhere and which everyone believes in, because nobody wants to be tortured. Nobody doesn't want to have enough food. Nobody, all the rights in it apply universally. So unless I think we can embed it back into the system, we're going to continue to see these awful conflicts.
Thank you.
Well, I think this is a really difficult question. We can say that we didn't make steps. We make a lot of steps. The world, today, the creation of the UN and all of these things, we make a lot. But let me say that I think there are more and a lot of injustice and inequalities that the world is facing currently. Even if today we can say that we grow lot in terms of economic growth and everything if you compare to past year. But there are a lot of demand today for justice. Many countries are demanding justice. People are demanding justice. And many countries are not able to offer this justice for people. Many countries are not able to really handle the demand of the population. This is what is creating what we are seeing today. And around the international community also, let's be clear today, many countries are asking also to be more represented at the table. And we have all the, today we are moving, you talk about the UN declaration, we are moving to the 75 years now, where we need to reaffirm the fundamental principle of dignity for everyone. But today we are also seeing that in some part of the world, conflicts that are emerging, most of the conflict today, they have, if you look at them, you can see the root causes go back many years. It's not for today. We are paying for some of the things that we are not able to solve, or we're trying to shy away from that. That's what we are paying today. But the big question now today is how do we stop that? To ensure that the next generation will not be in the same situation to deal with the same thing. That's why the 75 years anniversary of the UN Declaration should be the opportunity for the state to reaffirm the human rights as a part and core of any development processes or any peace processes. And that's why it's important. For me today, I'm saying that we spend many years to disempower the UN by bringing all of this geopolitical ideology. And I mentioned this yesterday to the third committee. I asked states that we need to leave aside our philosophy thinking, our division, our ideology, to really refocus on what's make our global security or what make us to live together in the best environment. If not, we will handle the same thing to the next generation. And I'm afraid, on top of those crises, climate crisis, deep inequality, I'm not sure the world will be able to handle all of these crises together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But just to end on a positive note.
Yes, I think
can't
so.
bear
We
this.
cannot go. I can't on you.
There are more people working in human rights now than ever before. There are about 10 million NGOs around the world. In Uganda, half of those working in human rights are under 24. There's a huge explosion in people becoming involved in human rights, a huge explosion of women and young women becoming involved in trying to promote and protect human rights. And that it has, we've been through dark times and we're in dark times, and there most likely will be dark times as we go forward. But it would be worse without women human rights defenders, men human rights defenders, and people who are striving to promote and protect human rights. And I think at the end of the day, that'll be the saviour going forward. The world is in a desperate condition, but it would be much worse if it wasn't for the work of human rights defenders.
I just wanted to really second you and to say that although the picture is so difficult for us today, I think we have tools to solve the problem today. And we are seeing, and the good thing for me, like Mary, you say, is that young people today don't accept any more the injustice. They are everywhere, and internet and everything denouncing. And this is an important thing because now they are really preoccupied by the future. They are really concerned, and they are involved in the processes when it comes to climate and all of this. So we have tools today to solve the problem. The only thing that we need today is a political will to reinforce UN institution to solve the problem, because we have those. We have all. We don't need to create anything more. Political will, this is what we need today. But we will get there.
I'm sorry, it was about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Unfortunately, it's a declaration. It's not binding document. Binding document like the Charter has been, we see today how they've been treated. So I understand your message. Young people, it's true, young people want those values to become binding. But how you can make this organization that to become a member of the United Nations, you have to respect the Charter, you have to sign it. How are we going to make the Universal Declaration, instead the treaty, a binding treaty?
Well, there are two covenants. There's the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and there's the Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and they're the covenants that give force to the Universal Declaration. And if states ratify those covenants, they agree to be bound by them. And then there's a whole other bunch of treaties, and you know yourself, like states who abolish the death penalty, they ratify that. States who agree not to torture people, they ratify the Convention Against Torture. So there's all this international machinery which keeps going on. But you're dead right. A lot of states ratify but don't abide by. And it is always a work in progress, trying to encourage states, trying to persuade them, trying to call them out on their shameful actions, trying to get the political will that Clément is talking about. And, we had an event in Vienna with young people and children who were human rights defenders in in June this year. We had 10 children. The youngest was 12, next one was 13, and he had to leave Colombia because of his work on climate action due to death threats. We had 15-year-olds from it was either Kenya, I think, and 17-year-olds from Palestine. We had, and they were all working on things like women's rights, girls' rights, bullying in schools, climate change. We had then we had 30 young people under 32, because that's the UN age of youth. And they were working on all sorts of issues, like everything that a more senior person would be working on. And they talked about their lack of access, their lack of being meaningfully included in, meaningfully allowed to participate in decisions that are affecting their future. Some of them are in danger. A couple of them have faced and have been imprisoned. But they are, to me, they're the hope of the future. These are the people that will carry the human rights movement forward into the future and will demand accountability insofar as we can. I mean, we know that states really should be ashamed of themselves. But there will always be people that will try and call them out on their unjust behaviour.
Yeah, just to add, I think for me, the upcoming summit of the future that the Secretary General is planning is an opportunity really for the states to understand that we don't have any choice than going for really peace. And to go for that, we need really to listen to young people. We need to listen to women. We need to listen to those who today are seeing their future completely dark. We need to listen to them. We don't have any choice. And this is the time for me for the commitments. Either we want to live together or we will disappear together. We are left with one choice. And the summit of the future, let's build the future. Let's build future that really is informed by what we learned from the past and what we are dreaming for as human beings, collectively living in the same world. And I think this is where I'm really waiting to see state really taking commitments that we want to build best future for the world. We want to build a best future for all of us.
Any additional comments this
No,
time?
I think we are
Okay.
done.
We're not going to solve all the world's problems today.
Thank you.
Then, on behalf of the journalists, let me just extend a thank you to both you, Mr. Voule and Special Rapporteur Lawlor, for engaging with us in a conversation, really on questions that went even past your mandates. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you.